Today was set up to be a big day, a very big day for Roger Ailes, the Fox Network, Drudge Report readers, the denizens of Michelle Malkin's website Twitchy, Sean Hannity's radio audience, and Congressman Darrell Issa. Why? Because today was Benghazi Day.
Benghazi bombshell. As accusations heat up, what will the whistleblowers reveal? And how truthful has the government been about the attack?
Oh, Hillary Clinton, how'd she get in there? If you have not been watching Fox News nonstop like we have here in the office, then you are likely unaware that the biggest story in America right now is, of course, the fallout, cover-up, and nefarious doings behind the horrible death of 4 Americans in the attack on Benghazi on September 11, 2012. According to Fox News, this cover-up is literally the biggest scandal since Watergate.
Watergate, Nixon lied, but nobody died. In Benghazi, 4 dead. White House went to bed.
Will it become, like the Watergate thing, a huge story? It's the same thing that happened with Watergate. I still believe that if this is just about a little old video, then Watergate was just about a little old flashlight and some duct tape and a bungled burglary of the Democratic headquarters.
By the way, in that case, nobody died in Watergate.
Nobody died in Watergate. So Fox News was all geared up today to really capture the outrage, to embrace the much-hyped whistleblower who has second-guessed a decision allegedly made by Special Operations Command Africa not to send special forces from Tripoli, the capital, to Benghazi, the site of the consulate, after insurgents attacked the mission there. A Pentagon spokesman reiterated today that special forces could not have made it to Benghazi in time to save lives and were needed in Tripoli to help secure the embassy there. That's not important because Fox was all teed up, promos had been made, hosts were properly outraged, the coverage plan was in motion, and then the cable news apocalypse happened.
Lots of breaking news this hour, including, look at this, live in Cleveland as Gina DeJesus arrives home. And wow, do we have some news for you now in Arizona, where the jury has reached a verdict in the Jodi Arias murder trial.
Stop of the professional captain, Megyn Kelly, who rolled very smoothly with that. Now, even though Fox was sort of amusingly knocked off their game today by forces of derp greater than themselves, they have done something truly remarkable here. Through sheer monomaniacal persistence, they have managed, almost single-handedly, to make this something that elected representatives are devoting themselves to. They've created an entire alternate universe in which Benghazi is the most pressing issue facing the country right now, and Congress, your representatives, are listening. Joining me tonight, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, Democrat from New York, who's on the House Oversight Committee and was at today's hearing, and Eric Boehlert, senior fellow at Media Matters, who has been tracking painstakingly the increasingly Byzantine manufactured Benghazi scandal on the right. Congresswoman, I guess I'll begin with you. Did you learn anything today at the hearing? There was some very compelling emotional testimony from the Deputy Chief of Mission about what happened that night. The story of what happened that night is harrowing and dramatic and upsetting for a variety of reasons, not the least of which 4 Americans ending up dead, the notion of people being trapped in a safe building that's burned to the ground. Did you learn something new today?
Well, I learned that a terrible terrorist attack was turned into a political attack. And what I find so distressing, Chris, is that when Americans are attacked, some turn around and attack more Americans instead of going after the terrorists. And I find it very unfortunate that they spent their time criticizing the military, the State Department, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and Americans instead of focusing on the 29 recommendations that the Accountability Review Board came out with to correct it to protect lives. I learned a lot, too, and what was interesting to me is these false lies that Issa has been saying on national television, claiming that the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had personally signed cables denying increased security were absolutely false. All 3 witnesses testified that the department's procedure of the State Department is that the secretary, whoever the secretary is, that their name is on every cable.
Right.
And the Accountability Review Board said that that was true and that she was not involved. It stopped at the deputy secretary level.
If you're joining the Benghazi story midstream, as I suspect some viewers are, the Accountability Review Board was the body that was appointed in the aftermath of the brouhaha that was originally raised back in 2012 in the waning days of the election, right, that came out with recommendations, right, that looked into it. And I want to be clear here, you know, I don't think, from where I stand, it doesn't seem to me at all wrong to second guess the State Department or decisions that were made by the Department of Defense or anyone in government if there are things to be gleaned about it. The question is, there's a difference, right, Eric, it strikes me, between things that went badly and should have gone better and a scandal.
Right.
And I'm not seeing, I know, I mean that. I mean, sometimes people make bad decisions.
Absolutely.
And then there's scandal. And I don't see how we get from the former to the latter.
No, and neither does anyone else. The Congresswoman talked about the ICE allegation, which is now in the dustbin. Go back to 2012. Obama never called this terror. That's false.
Mitt Romney's worst campaign moment, which Sean Hannity recently revealed he cursed Mitt Romney out for not doubling down on what was his worst campaign moment.
General Petraeus had resigned because of Benghazi. Hillary faked her concussion because she didn't want to testify. The lies and misinformation Fox News has been peddling since September. We're almost in 8 months of this. You lose track, you lose count. They just pile up and they pile up. And, the silenced whistleblowers who silenced, they spoke with the Independent Review Board. One guy wanted to go back twice and talk to him again.
And he did.
And they said, of course, come back. Tell us whatever you want, because, as you said, the review board was interested in finding out what went wrong. How can we prevent this from happening? Fox News has shown no interest in finding out how can we prevent this from happening. It's been an endless politicization. And today, this was their blockbuster. This was their Watergate. And by 2 o'clock, people were like changing the channel.
They cut away from their own coverage. Congresswoman, I don't know if you saw how your remarks today at the hearing were covered, but I want to show you a split screen. There right now, there's you live speaking. And Fox at that moment, I think coincidentally, I'd say, decided to go to highlights of previous statements that had been given by Republicans in that very same hearing. Although there you are actually appearing. So my question to you is there a place where they can get off the train here? I mean, is this going to keep going, or are things being settled? And I'd like you to answer that question right after we take this quick break. We're talking about the right-wing Benghazi hearing bust with Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney and Eric Boehlert of Media Matters. So, Congresswoman, before we went to break, the question to you is there some point at which they talk themselves out on this topic, in which there's the Accountability Review Board there's something that will make them stop, or do you get the sense that there is nothing that will make them stop?
I think they're going to keep going with their partisan attacks, and I would say, Chris, that they're entitled to have their own political point of view, but they can't make up their own facts. And it's very clear that the Secretary of State did not sign those cables. And I would say to the chairman, Issa, that he should take down from the Republican website the statement that she did. It's completely false. And the Washington Post, in their Fact Finder column, called this a completely false statement. They called it a whopper and gave Chairman Issa 4 Pinocchios. But no one substantiates these claims, and they should give the Secretary of State an apology, and at the very least take this false information off of a government website.
Eric, I cannot help but notice that Hillary Clinton features quite prominently in the questioning today, as I watched part of the hearing, in the graphic we showed. If I were disposed to have an uncharitable view of this enterprise, I might be led to believe that this was politically motivated to try to sully her in advance of what is perceived to be an inevitable White House run.
This was going to be the dream bank shot. It was going to lead to impeachment for Obama, and that was going to derail Hillary's 2016 campaign. It didn't do either. And what the Congresswoman talked about, they can't get off this train. The obvious place would have been at the end of the election. The obvious place would have been the State Department report. But Fox needs this content. They need this phony outrage machine.
But why? Well, I literally don't understand why now.
I'll tell you why.
Okay, because it was, if I was tracking it, it was like, okay, but the right wingers on my feed are tweeting me about Benghazi, and then it's like there's a lull, and then all of a sudden, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, everything I tweeted, Benghazi.
Right. This was really a hearing about a report, so they didn't really get anywhere with the actual attack, any wrongdoing cover-up. So then the independent report came out, and then they decided, well, we'll have a hearing about the report because they didn't talk to the right people, or they quote silenced people, or the report is part of the cover-up. These generals with sterling reputations were in on this with the White House, according to Fox News. So that was sort of, you know, Act 3, Act 5, Act 10, take your pick. But again, Fox is committed to the storyline. If you watch tonight, the hearings were a blockbuster. It's all unraveling because this is the phony story they tell their viewers, just like they told them Romney was going to win in a landslide. It's the same thing.
You know, and I can't help but notice that at this point, so we just to track through, and I don't want to like I do not want to drain you, dear viewers, emotional and cognitive energy on getting into the weeds of Benghazi, because for the most part, the weeds are unedifying. But you know what I can't help but notice even today at the hearing, going back to these attacks that we saw back in September. I mean, Susan Rice shouldn't have said the things she said on the Sunday morning talk shows, which maybe what she said wasn't the full picture, although again, it was a pretty chaotic situation. But that was, you know, 6-7 months ago. That I thought we'd been through that, and yet, Congresswoman, those same things that we were hearing back in, you know, October were being trotted out again today.
Right, you're right. They just kept bringing up all these attacks, these partisan attacks. What I don't understand is after 9/11, Republicans and Democrats came together and we were united and determined to protect our homeland security, to change our intelligence system, and we worked together to implement many, many reforms to make our country stronger and our intelligence stronger and to protect our citizens. That effort isn't there now. It just seems to be a partisan attack. And Americans were killed, Americans were attacked, and yet their response is to attack Americans, attack the State Department, attack the military. We should be united in implementing the 29 recommendations, in upping the funding to protect our personnel in embassies around the world.
That did seem to me that to the extent there was a salvageable policy takeaway was that the consulate was probably undersecured, that it was that we did not have our own staff in diplomatic security, which was an enterprise that had been gutted by outsourcing for years, largely turned over to Blackwater, let's all recall. And then Blackwater became so politically toxic in a place like Libya, in which you're dealing with a very vulnerable nascent government, that you could not bring in Blackwater. And so the answer was local militias, who were the ones who we outsourced it to, as opposed to actually keeping diplomatic security in-house with a professional corps that was funded, right? I want to give people
what we need to do.
Right, and I want to give people just a sense also, this is attacks on U.S. diplomatic targets by administration from 1970, 2010. Put this just in a little bit of context, okay? We are seeing, in the broad scheme of things, right, very low historic levels of attacks at targets. It's unclear that embassy security on the whole, in a macro sense, is deficient. And the thing, Eric, I couldn't help but notice today is that what the latest, to the extent that there's a latest plot point in the scandal, it comes down to second-guessing a call, presumably made by the AFRICOM commander, about whether to send a special ops team helicopter at the moment when he made the call not to send it. Now, again, I don't think a general is above second-guessing, but I do have a little bit of humility myself about, like, whether I'm the right person to make that call 9 months later in the midst of what is a chaotic battle scene about whether to send a helicopter.
And that's what Leon Panetta talked about a couple months ago. He called it Monday morning quarterbacking, which it is. Look, it's fine to have differing opinion. It's fine to say we disagree what the administration did. That's sort of what op-eds are for, not congressional hearings. The premise that you're going to have people come in because we disagree with what the administration did, that's not a blockbuster.
Or what a commander did. I mean, you can imagine Democrats raising a hackle about a command decision made during a Battle of Fallujah, where to send a battalion of Marines. Eric Boehlert of Media Matters and Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, thank you both.
Thanks, Chris.